The girl was clearly only a first-year high school student. Yet she was the boss of Jiangshan High, the most notorious school in the country, because her father had once been a wrestler, hailed as an undefeated legend in the ring. And as his daughter, she was no less terrifying. But one day, this overwhelmingly dominant girl announced at school, any behavior unfit for a student would be banned. And that naturally gave the resentful ones the opening they needed to launch a coup. After all, in H country, there were 3 hopeless schools. Jian Tech High, that swept through everything like an army, and Solhanin Intelligence High, brutal to the core. And the worst of them all, Jiangshan High School. The biker gangs here replaced themselves year after year, earning a nationwide reputation. And even among these disgrace-filled, hopeless schools, it stood at the very top, with a delinquent rate as high as 96% and hundreds of violent incidents a year, an absolute den of evil in the 21st century. But not long ago, that den of evil changed. Jiangshan High, the most notorious school in the nation, was overturned by a first-year girl. And that girl was Gu Sarah. One day, in a corner of the city, Daosong High and Jiangshan High gathered for a scheduled brawl. Their numbers evenly matched. The buzzcut guy sneered, "So this is Jiangshan, the one that got overturned by a woman?" The blonde guy poked his neck with the stick of a lollipop and laughed. Daosong trash has really grown bold. Not long ago, they couldn't even meet our eyes. Now even Daosong's little nobodies dare to mock Jiangshan High. Just as Beck, Junsu, and the buzzcut guy were about to clash, a girl suddenly stepped between them. Both men froze at once. Faced with her appearance, their reactions couldn't have been more different. The buzzcut guy barked at her, demanding what the hell she was doing, while Beck Junsu asked in shock why she had come. The girl replied calmly, "Why not?" That girl was Gu Sarah of Jiangshan High. Beck Junsu said nervously, "It's not that. I just think you didn't need to come out here." Suddenly, a burly guy from Daosong High slapped a hand onto Gu Sarah's shoulder and grinned viciously. "What's with this grape-head little bitch?" The moment he finished saying he'd chew her up skin and all, he was sent flying by Gu Sarah's sudden punch. Seeing this, one of the nobodies nearby roared in anger and charged at Gu Sarah with his fist raised. The punch landed solidly on Gu Sarah, but to his horror, she had deliberately met it with her forehead, making him instantly realize this woman was insane. The very next second, Gu Sarah's fist slammed straight into the man's face. "Wanting to show you what a crazy woman really looks like," she said coldly. Several of the man's teeth shattered on impact, and only one thought remained in his head. Is she really a woman? Gu Sarah clicked her tongue, clearly not satisfied. "I heard you've been talking about me behind my back. Want to come at me together?" What followed was a one-sided slaughter. With a single punch, Gu Sarah fractured the buzzcut guy's chest bones. He let out a scream that tore through the air. Nearby, Beck Junsu pulled out a fresh lollipop and sighed. "This is exactly why I didn't plan on calling you. Once you show up, there's nothing left for us to do." Jiangshan High's nationwide infamy had only one explanation. It had been conquered by a woman, and that woman was Gu Sarah. By then, Gu Sarah had already taken down every Daosong student present, all by herself. Cheers erupted from all around. Just in case they're putting on a front, how about we go straight to their school and finish it? Standing at the front, Kong Ji-soo, the one known as the war-crazed woman, snorted. "They're just a bunch of dumb boys from an all-male school." Beck Junsu stepped forward and casually draped a hand over Gu Sarah's shoulder. Still got it. When he started to ask if she wanted to go street racing, Gu Sarah raised her fist and shot him a glare. "Take your hand off." Beck Junsu yanked his hand back instantly. Gu Sarah continued, "Enough talk, Ducko, light it up. We're heading back to school." On a road somewhere in the city, a couple drove out together, just like any other day. Suddenly, the man noticed a group of motorcycles appearing behind their car. The roar of engines filled the street. It was Jiangshan High students returning in triumph. One of them whistled toward the front and laughed. "This is insane, don't you think she's ridiculously cool?" Riding at the front was Gu Sarah. She was sitting in the back seat of a motorcycle, fast asleep, completely steady. The rider in front immediately broke into a cold sweat. "Did you see how she moved back there? You've gone crazy if you're thinking about dating. Do you really think a monster like that cares about romance? His thoughts drifted back 6 years earlier to the moment he opened his door. A little girl stood outside and blurted out, "Marry me." That girl was Gu Sarah, back when she was still a child. After hearing her confession, the man reached out and gently patted her head. That man was Gu Sarah's first love, Lee Seo-jun, but at the time he only thought of it as a child that didn't yet understand her feelings. When Gu Sarah was very young, Lee Seo-jun had been a college student boarding at her house. Gu Sarah liked Lee Seo-jun because he was handsome. Whether he was watching TV or studying, Lee Seo-jun always looked good. Even his smile felt warm, like a spring breeze. Little Gu Sarah was completely captivated by his looks, unable to stop thinking, "Damn, he's ridiculously handsome." One night, the two of them stood on the rooftop, as usual, watching the city below. Lee Seo-jun said that no matter when he looked at it, the view here was always beautiful. Beside him, little Gu Sarah felt just as happy. At that moment, Lee Seo-jun draped his jacket over her shoulders. Worried she might catch a chill, the destructive power of a white moonlight finally took physical form. At first, little Gu Sarah had been drawn to his looks, but over time, she was slowly captivated by his gentle care. She wished that this peaceful happiness could last forever. But that day, when little Gu Sarah returned home after school as usual, ready to share the fun things that had happened at school, her father handed her a letter, saying that Lee Seo-jun had asked him to pass it on. After reading its contents, Gu Sarah was unable to let go for a long time. Farewell had arrived quietly. She asked her father what it meant to enlist. Her father comforted her. "It means protecting the country. He asked me to tell you he's sorry he left without saying goodbye." Her thoughts snapped back to the present. Lee Seo-jun's sudden enlistment. Her first love had been taken away by the nation. The scene shifted to Jiangshan High. Inside the classroom, the atmosphere boiled like an exploded pot as two students locked arms in an arm wrestling match. Suddenly, the man in black let out a furious roar. Then he burst with strength and slammed the other man's arm down. As the loser, the bald man naturally took a punch, but no one expected him to dare strike back. The surrounding students watching the show immediately started cheering. From a desk in the distance, a girl asked in confusion, "Are they monkeys?" Kang Ji-soo replied, "That's an insult to monkeys." At that moment, Gu Sarah pulled open the classroom door and said one thing, "You're too loud." The noisy classroom instantly fell silent, and every student obediently returned to their seat. She went back to her desk and told her deskmate not to disturb her sleep, that deskmate being one of the guys who had just been arm wrestling, dressed in black. She then told him to wake her up during lunch break and laid her head down on the desk to sleep. Just then, the class bell rang and the director entered with a new intern teacher. The intern teacher's handsome looks immediately caught the attention of Kang Ji-soo and the others. After that, the intern teacher introduced himself at the podium. Gu Sarah was already asleep and even drooling, so she naturally didn't hear a thing. Two students in the corner felt irritated when they saw the new intern teacher. The director told the intern teacher to take attendance and then left. The intern teacher picked up the attendance sheet and began calling names. Jiang Daheng, present. Kang Ji-soo, present. But when he called Gu Sarah's name, there was no response in the classroom. The two students sitting in front of Gu Sarah began sweating nervously, afraid she would explode if woken up. Finally, Gu Sarah was woken by the intern teacher repeatedly calling her name, and she asked angrily who it was that kept calling her. Then she heard a voice say, "So it really is you, Gu Sarah." She rubbed her sleepy eyes, looked up, and asked who he was. After clearly seeing the other person's face, she snapped fully awake. She never expected that the person standing there would be Lee Seo-jun. In that instant, it was as if time itself had been frozen. Lee Seo-jun's smile was just as bright as it was in her memories, and he gently said, "Long time no see, Sarah." Gu Sarah stood up in shock, thinking that he was supposed to be enlisted. How could someone who had disappeared suddenly appear here? Lee Seo-jun bent slightly and softly apologized for startling her, then asked if she had been doing well all this time. Gu Sarah stammered as she tried to answer. Left with no choice, Lee Seo-jun said they could talk more after class. But at that moment, the pot-lid, hair guy who had been sitting in the corner stood up behind Lee Seo-jun, cracking his knuckles, asking who Lee Seo-jun thought he was pointing fingers at. Then he grabbed Lee Seo-jun by the collar. With a sudden punch, he sent Lee Seo-jun flying and cursed him as a damn pretty boy. The vicious blow slammed Lee Seo-jun headfirst into the cabinet behind him. The classroom erupted instantly as the pot-lid, hair guy raised both hands and said that no one here would go easy on him just because he was a teacher. Lee Seo-jun responded calmly, telling the student to relax, saying that there seemed to be a misunderstanding and that they could talk things out peacefully. Hearing Lee Seo-jun's words, the pot-lid, haired guy couldn't help but burst into laughter. He then yanked hard on Lee Seo-jun's hair, the sharp pain immediately contorting Lee Seo-jun's face. The pot-lid, hair guy showed no concern for his pain and continued, asking how he could say something so boring. Just as the pot-lid, hair guy was about to slam Lee Seo-jun's head into the floor, a hand suddenly grabbed the pot-lid guy by the hair as well. To his shock, it was Gu Sarah. She angrily demanded to know what he thought he was doing to a teacher. 6 years earlier, Gu Sarah had once taught a lesson to a boy who bullied girls. In retaliation, that boy brought his older brothers to get revenge on her. Standing nearby, the boy kept egging his brothers on to keep beating Gu Sarah. Just as the older brothers cracked their knuckles again, Lee Seo-jun happened to pass by, noticed the scene, and immediately called out to them. He then rushed over without hesitation, only to be smashed in the face by a sudden punch. One of the brothers laughed arrogantly and said, "Who do you think you are yelling at? You useless trash?" Little Gu Sarah froze at the sight. She never expected to drag Lee Seo-jun into this. But Lee Seo-jun endured the man's punches and rushed forward to pull her into his arms. What followed, however, was a merciless barrage of kicks from the gang. That day, even as Gu Sarah's vision gradually blurred, she could still clearly remember Brother Seo-jun's smile. Her thoughts snapped back to the present. Seeing Gu Sarah's abnormal reaction, the surrounding students were utterly confused. Just as Gu Sarah raised her left hand, about to strike the pot-lid, haired guy, a sudden shout of "Stop!" froze her in place. Everyone turned toward the voice that had called it out. It was Kang Ji-soo. She pulled out her phone and said that this was the hidden camera segment meant to fool the teachers, and that the prank on the new intern teacher was a success. Then she smiled and turned toward the classmates behind her, prompting them to confirm it was true. Yet her expression clearly said, "Cooperate if you don't want to die." The surrounding students immediately broke into a cold sweat and played along. Soon after, cheers and applause erupted throughout the classroom. Kang Ji-soo quickly told the pot-lid guy to let go, or Teacher Seo-jun would misunderstand. Hearing that, the pot-lid guy hurriedly released his grip. He then explained that he had gotten too into it and hadn't controlled his strength properly. Even so, everyone around still watched Gu Sarah nervously. Gu Sarah slowly loosened her hold on the pot-lid guy's hand. Then, somewhat tense, she said, "Welcome to Jiangshan, Brother Seo-jun." Seeing this, the students around finally relaxed their tightly wound nerves. No one had expected that the new intern teacher not only knew Gu Sarah, but also had Gu Sarah backing him. The scene shifted to the education training room. Two intern teachers who had arrived at the same time as Lee Seo-jun were sitting inside, both looking dejected. The male teacher stared blankly and said that he really wanted to go home. The female teacher, on the verge of tears, cried out, asking if this place was really a school. No one listened in class. There was constant noise and fighting, and even when she tried to stop it, no one paid attention. She said she had been genuinely terrified. The male teacher added that he had actually been extorted in the restroom earlier. Both of them were crying over having chosen the wrong school. Just then, a knock came from outside the door. The person who entered was none other than Lee Seo-jun. The two of them hurriedly stood up and asked whether students had bullied him or if he had been extorted. Confused by their questions, Lee Seo-jun replied that the students were all simple and kind. Just 40 minutes earlier, the math teacher had gone to class as usual. To his shock, Everyone had been listening attentively. He couldn't help asking if they had taken the wrong medicine and why they were suddenly so focused today. The two students sitting in front of Gu Sarah answered nervously, saying, "Teacher, what are you talking about? Isn't studying a student's duty?" Lee Seo-jun calmly told the two fellow interns that the classroom atmosphere was great, that there were no students sleeping during class, and that he felt coming to Jiangshan for his internship had been the right choice. The two intern teachers were left completely stunned by Lee Seo-jun's answer. Meanwhile, after class, Gu Sarah walked toward the vending machine, her mind replaying the scene from the classroom over and over. She thought to herself that it was a good thing they'd covered it up as a hidden camera prank. She had almost gone on a full rampage right in front of Brother Seo-jun, and she still didn't understand why he would choose to intern at such a trash school. Just as she was about to buy her usual drink, a hand slowly reached out. To her surprise, it was Lee Seo-jun that he asked if that was what she was going to drink. Then he said it had been a long time, called her Sarah, asked if seeing him so suddenly had scared her, and suggested they talk for a bit. After that, the two of them sat outside and talked about the past. Gu Sarah said helplessly that his sudden disappearance had turned out to be because he forgot to receive his enlistment notice, which honestly made sense, since all he ever did was read books. Lee Seo-jun explained that he had run into circumstances during his time in the military that he couldn't talk about, and after being discharged, he went overseas, which was why he hadn't been able to stay in touch with Gu Sarah. Hearing Lee Seo-jun's explanation, Gu Sarah puffed out her cheeks and said it was all just excuses. No matter what, he could have contacted her at least once. Lee Seo-jun suddenly reached out and ruffled her hair, saying that the little kid from back then had grown up so much, but the sudden gesture startled Gu Sarah so badly that she spat out the soda in her mouth. Flustered, she started smacking him repeatedly, while passing students thought to themselves that it really was Gu Sarah, bold enough to beat up a teacher in public. Inside, Gu Sarah kept telling herself that even if he was her first love, that was 6 years ago. Why panic? This was way too embarrassing. When Lee Seo-jun mentioned that it hurt, Gu Sarah snapped back to her senses, hurriedly apologized, and asked if he had found a place to stay, wondering if it was because his home was in the countryside. Holding his shoulder that had practically been beaten into smoke, Lee Seo-jun replied that he had already settled it, asking if her uncle hadn't told her. Hearing that, Gu Sarah froze on the spot. She finally muttered under her breath that her brother Seo-jun was going to live at her house. Scenes from 6 years ago, when Lee Seo-jun had lived with her family, kept replaying in her mind. Then she heard Lee Seo-jun say that he had already talked it over with her uncle, and that during the internship he would stay at her place like before, asking her to take care of him again. Sarah. Gu Sarah was so shocked that she could barely hold onto the drink in her hand. In the blink of an eye, it was time to go home, and Gu Sarah's father, Gu Longxue, was lying down watching a wrestling program. Behind him stood rows of wrestling championship trophies, because he had once been a professional wrestler. He was known as the undefeated legend of the wrestling world, with a record of 393 matches and 393 victories, 0 losses. Just then, he heard the sound of the door opening. He didn't pay any attention to his daughter's expression, kept watching TV, and told her to hurry up and prepare dinner. Gu Sarah, meanwhile, was annoyed that her dad hadn't told her in advance that Lee Seo-jun would be staying at their place. What followed was a picture of harmonious father and daughter, prompting Lee Seo-jun, standing by the door, to decide that the two of them were still just as harmonious as ever. After dinner, the two of them went up to the rooftop like old times, watching the view and talking things out. Gu Sarah explained that it wasn't that she didn't welcome him, and Lee Seo-jun smiled and said he knew. He then remarked that the scenery here was still beautiful. It reminded him of how the two of them used to play here all the time. Hearing that, Gu Sarah shyly said she was really glad to see him again and congratulated him on becoming a teacher. Lee Seo-jun said he wasn't a full-fledged teacher yet, and Gu Sarah told him not to nitpick. Then Lee Seo-jun continued, thanking her, Sarah. He added that he was also happy to see her again and apologized for disappearing so suddenly back then. But deep down, Gu Sarah knew one thing clearly. He was still damn handsome. Just as Lee Seo-jun turned his head to look at her, she quickly turned away and asked why he had come to Jiangshan. Hearing that, Lee Seo-jun said, "Do you remember that my dream was to become a teacher? To become a teacher, you have to take recruitment exams, which means you need internship experience." But Gu Sara still couldn't understand why he would choose Jiangshan. Lee Seo-jun explained that he had missed the internship application deadline, making it hard to find a school, but Jiangshan had quickly accepted his application. Gu Sara was left speechless, thinking that forgetting the enlistment notice before was one thing. Missing the application deadline again just proved how careless he really was. Lee Seo-jun went on to say that this internship was extremely important to him. If he couldn't complete it smoothly, he might have to give up on his dream of becoming a teacher, especially since his parents opposed that path. Hearing this, Gu Sara anxiously said that it couldn't be like that. He had worked so hard to become a teacher. How could he give up his dream for such a reason? Suddenly, Lee Seo-jun placed his hand on her head and told her not to worry, calling her Sarah. He said that he would definitely become an outstanding teacher. He then added that, luckily, he had chosen the right school, that he should be able to complete the internship smoothly, and that the students were kind and the classroom atmosphere was great. Gu Sara's head instantly started to ache as she thought that he only knew how to study, and probably didn't realize that their school was actually a notorious delinquent haven. Otherwise, how could it have been listed among the 3 hopeless schools? Still, she told him not to worry. She would protect his dream of becoming an excellent teacher. Early the next morning, after washing up, Lee Seo-jun planned to ask Gu Sara if she wanted to go to school together. But he couldn't find her anywhere, which meant she had already gone out. That day, the students of Jiangshan High behaved completely out of character, all arriving at school unusually early because they had received an assembly order first thing in the morning. No matter how dissatisfied they felt, it was Gu Sara's order, so they had no choice but to comply. At that moment, heavy footsteps echoed across the ground. Gu Sara was standing above them, her gaze cold as she looked down at the delinquents below. In an instant, the entire crowd fell silent. Gu Sara spoke, telling everyone to listen carefully. Starting today, she would carry out a large-scale overhaul of Jiangshan. Over the next 4 weeks, fighting on campus and all forms of delinquent behavior would be strictly forbidden. Any action unbefitting a student's identity would be banned. From this day forward, Jiangshan would become a model school. The delinquents below immediately erupted in outrage. Then came a loud crash as Gu Sara shattered the wall beside her with a single punch. The students who had been complaining fell silent at once, cold sweat pouring down their faces. Gu Sara continued, asking one more time if anyone had objections. If so, they could come up and fight her. To keep her white moonlight brother from being bullied by problem students, Gu Sara decided to forcibly turn this school into a model institution. If anyone disagreed, they were welcome to step forward. The students below immediately broke into whispers, unable to understand why Gu Sara was acting so differently today. A bald student leaned toward Baek Jun-soo and asked quietly if he wasn't close with Gu Sara and what was going on with her. But even Baek Jun-soo, Gu Sara's right-hand man, was only learning about this now. He never expected her to declare that Jiangshan would become a model school. Just then, Gu Sara's eyes swept over the students still holding cigarettes. She glared at them and snapped, "What are you doing? Drop whatever's in your hands right now." Meanwhile, on the way to school, Lee Seo-jun was suddenly called out. The ones who stopped him were the 2 other intern teachers who had arrived at the same time as he had. Lee Seo-jun greeted them, but immediately noticed that something was off about their condition. They explained that, of course, they didn't want to go to work. After being terrified of the students, they hadn't slept a wink all night. Lee Seo-jun, on the other hand, looked forward to going to school. He asked if there might be some misunderstanding, saying the students were all kind. The 2 interns couldn't understand him at all. What exactly had he been talking about since yesterday? Along the way, they kept explaining that Jiangshan was a notorious problem school, one that had even been reported on the news multiple times. Just as they reached the school gate and looked inside together, they saw a student licking the jagged edge of a broken half bottle, glaring viciously at them. The female teacher was so frightened by the sight that she hurriedly told Lee Seo-jun to look at him, insisting that she had said the students were terrifying. Lee Seo-jun, however, asked in confusion what the student was doing. The student walked over holding the broken bottle and replied, "What do you think I'm doing? Can't you tell?" Seeing the broken bottle up close, the female teacher turned pale with fear. But in the next second, the student pulled a black plastic bag from his pocket and said that he was cleaning the campus, wishing the teachers good morning. He then turned and shouted at the students still cleaning behind him, asking what they were doing and whether they hadn't noticed the teachers arriving. The students who had been cleaning immediately lined up and bowed politely in greeting. The two intern teachers were completely stunned by the students' sudden change, while Lee Seo-jun turned back to them with a smile and said that he had told them already. The kids here were very well behaved. What he didn't know was that every single one of those students was forcing a smile under Gu Sara's intimidation, while Gu Sara herself stood upstairs, watching everything from afar. She was extremely satisfied with her masterpiece. But this sudden reform was pure torture for the Jiangshan students, whose delinquency rate reached as high as 96%. Inside the classroom, a delinquent student sat in his seat, constantly gnawing on his fingernails. Even his legs couldn't stay still, shaking nonstop. Most of them were suffering because smoking had been banned, leaving them with nothing to chew on but pens clenched between their teeth. Others, forbidden from fighting, tried to burn off energy through exercise, and some were so bored and restless that they kept slamming into the walls. They muttered endlessly, chanting nonsense like "carry 1 floor, carry 2 floors." The hands of 2 students trembled as if they had Parkinson's, just as the 2 of them were about to sneak out to relax for a bit. One of them froze right as he was about to suggest going to the convenience store. He caught a familiar scent, and saliva immediately pooled in his mouth. At that moment, they spotted someone secretly smoking downstairs. They were stunned that those guys dared to openly violate Gu Sara's rules. The pot-lid, hair guy wiped his drool and said it looked pretty good, suggesting they go relax too. Right then, Gu Sara suddenly appeared behind them and asked what they were talking about, instantly scaring the 2 into full-body tremors. But Gu Sara didn't care about them at all. She shoved the bald guy aside, walked up to the window, and told them to look at those idiots setting a delinquent example in a so-called sacred school. Then, without warning, she leapt straight down. The students breaking the rules were still congratulating themselves for not being noticed, when the next second, a thunderous crash rang out, and Gu Sara landed firmly on the ground. She glared at them and asked if they had enjoyed themselves, calling them filthy goldfish. The students watching from upstairs instantly broke into cold sweats, unable to understand what that lunatic Gu Sara was really trying to do as a disciplinary officer. With effortless ease, Gu Sara threw a punch and sent the rule-breaking fat kid flying. As she coldly stared at the bodies on the ground, someone suddenly appeared behind her and commented that every punch she threw was filled with killing intent. It was Baek Jun-soo, who continued, telling her to stop already, asking if she planned to turn the school into a hospital, since this kind of behavior wasn't new, and questioning what had pushed her to suddenly try to change the entire school. Gu Sara replied indifferently that students were supposed to follow discipline and stay away from delinquent behavior. Baek Jun-soo's face darkened as he thought about how she herself had just been in a fight yesterday. Baek Jun-soo kept persuading her, pointing out that resentment was already spreading everywhere. He reminded her that she knew exactly what the people at this school were like, and that things could easily spiral out of control if this continued. Gu Sara, however, didn't care at all, asking what they could possibly do about it. Suddenly, she noticed Lee Seo-jun not far away. He looked genuinely happy as students greeted him politely. Even when Baek Jun-soo demanded that Gu Sara give a reason the students could accept, she only stared at Lee Seo-jun with starry eyes and said she didn't owe anyone an explanation. If they weren't satisfied, they could try becoming the boss themselves. Hearing this, the students upstairs grew even angrier, yet none of them dared to speak up. Meanwhile, someone had gathered all the major and minor delinquents of Jiangshan on the rooftop. Suddenly, a man slammed his fist into the wall, cracking it instantly. He roared that he had reached his limit, shouting that no school had the right to trample on personal habits. This man was Yoon Jong-yu, the former boss of Jiangshan's second-year students. He bellowed at the crowd, cursing what kind of place this even was, and how no school should ever push people this far. One of the students spoke nervously, telling the senior to calm down. He was Choi Dong-hyun, the guy who had nearly become the Year 1 boss of Jongshan High. But Yoon Jong-yu snapped back without restraint, asking how he was supposed to stay calm when Gu Sera was changing the entire school on a whim. Scratching his head, Choi Dong-hyun said he thought it had something to do with the new intern teacher. A good-looking intern had arrived, and from what everyone said, the two seemed to know each other and looked unusually close. Gu Sera, who normally didn't care about school affairs at all, suddenly changing like this had to be related to that intern teacher. Hearing that, Yoon Jong-yu's anger exploded. He turned and slammed his fists into the wall, venting his rage as he cursed Gu Sera for tormenting the entire student body over nothing more than a damn intern teacher. Exhausted, Yoon Jong-yu leaned against the wall and muttered that if Brother Lubu were still around, things would never have come to this. At that moment, someone stepped forward and said that if that guy were still at school, Gu Sera would never have overturned everything. But bringing up someone locked away in juvenile detention was pointless now. The speaker was Lin Min-sung, who had nearly become the Year 3 boss of Jongshan High. He continued calmly, saying that since things had already reached this point, it was time to do what needed to be done. Yoon Jong-yu looked confused, asking what exactly that meant, while Lin Min-sung replied evenly that the school wasn't already a complete mess. And in a situation like this, there was only one thing they could do: stage a coup. The moment he said it, murmurs broke out as no one understood what he meant by a coup, questioning why he had even gathered them there. Realizing what Lin Min-sung was implying, Yoon Jong-yu asked again in shock if he was really talking about a coup, and Lin Min-sung answered calmly that he was. Lin Min-sung pulled a cigarette from his pocket and said she had banned all their hobbies, forced them to bow 90 degrees whenever they saw a teacher, and made them clean every morning, asking if this place was supposed to be a finishing school. He snapped at them to wake up and asked if they really thought enduring 1 month would free them from this hell. He mocked them for catering to Gu Sera like she was some saint, saying that nothing would change unless she was defeated. Under the stunned gazes of the crowd, Lin Min-sung lit the cigarette. With him taking the lead, restlessness began to spread. Two of them, still afraid of Gu Sera, ultimately gave in to the temptation of smoking and muttered that they had no reason to live like this, claiming even a tiger couldn't stand against a pack of wolves, and that letting a woman rule had already humiliated them enough. By then, Lin Min-sung had lit 3 cigarettes at once and clenched them between his lips. He sneered and told them to ignite the flames of revolution, declaring that all their resentment stemmed from Gu Sera. He claimed that Jongshan had never been this united in its history, and that the time for a regime change had finally arrived. He spat that the idea of a model school could go to hell, because this was Jongshan, and it was time to launch a coup. Instantly, the crowd erupted, shouting Lin Min-sung's name. At that moment, a figure slowly stepped onto the stairway leading up to the rooftop. The next second, a thunderous bang slammed against the rooftop door, as if someone on the other side were pounding it wildly. Then the door burst open, and the person standing in front of it was sent flying by the impact. Once they saw who it was, cigarettes dropped from their mouths in shock, and even the bosses from each grade stared wide-eyed. The one who had arrived was Gu Sera. Holding back her anger, she said she had already banned all delinquent behavior on campus, only coming up because the rooftop was too loud, never expecting them to go as far as planning a coup. She crooked her finger and told them to try it if they dared. Jongshan High entered red alert mode, and no one on the rooftop even dared to breathe, unable to understand how Gu Sera had found them. Then she spoke in a low voice, warning that before anything else, if they didn't want to die, they should throw away whatever they were holding. Trembling, everyone hurriedly removed the cigarettes from their mouths and dropped them. At that moment, Lin Min-sung stepped forward instead, sneering that there was nothing to be afraid of with so many people present. Grinding his teeth, he cursed that this was perfect, calling her a reckless bitch and declaring the rooftop her grave. The instant she heard that, Gu Sera's fury fully ignited. The crowd erupted, cheering for Lin Min-sung's courage, shouting about igniting the flames of revolution and holding Gu Sara's removal ceremony right then and there. Fueled by the noise, Lin Minsong charged at Gu Sara with everything he had. He threw what he called the Fist of Revolution. But the next second, he realized his punch had been caught effortlessly, as Gu Sara calmly remarked that attacking first meant he wanted a real fight. Before he could react, Gu Sara's fist smashed straight into his face. As he was sent flying, a single thought filled Lin Minsong's mind. Was that really the punch of a female student? It felt like being struck head-on by a hammer, proving once again that she was a monster. One-on-one was never going to work, but as the saying goes, even a tiger can't stand against a pack of wolves. Your tyranny ends today. This is the fire of revolution. Yet the moment the so-called vanguard was taken down with a single punch, everyone else started trembling in fear. Even after Lin Minsong slammed into the wall with a loud crash, not a single person dared challenge Gu Sara again. He cursed furiously, shouting at them to stop freezing up and attack, but no one responded. Watching this, Lin Minsong felt his heart sink. Something had gone terribly wrong, and his entire plan had collapsed. At that moment, Gu Sara spoke coldly, saying she once read in a manga that throughout human history, the only truly unforgivable crime was rebellion. What followed was not something meant to be described in detail. Seeing this, the others tried to slip away quietly, but after only a few steps, Gu Sara called out to them. She demanded to know where they thought they were going, reeking of delinquency, calling them a bunch of idiots. Everyone froze in terror, fully aware that there was no escape this time. The scene shifted to the teacher training room after school. Lee Seo-jun had just stepped out of the room. We spotted Gu Sara waiting outside. He asked why she hadn't gone home yet, and Gu Sara replied a bit guiltily that she still had something to take care of. She then asked if Lee Seo-jun was off work and suggested they leave together. On the way, Gu Sara asked whether school life was treating him well and if anyone had bullied him, and Lee Seo-jun smiled as he said everything was fine, the atmosphere was good, and everyone was friendly. Seeing how happy Lee Seo-jun looked, Gu Sara finally relaxed and asked softly if that was really true. Lee Seo-jun smiled brightly and said that coming to Jiangshan had truly been the right choice. Gu Sara's heart skipped wildly, her chest fluttering like a startled deer as she cursed inwardly at how insanely handsome he looked when he smiled. With only 3 weeks left before his internship ended, she had already dealt with the troublemakers, and the school should stay quiet for a while. Meanwhile, Lin Minsong and the others were still pinned on the rooftop, where he snarled through clenched teeth, demanding to know why none of them had charged earlier. Yoon Jong-yu replied coldly that revolutions needed a true core figure, leaving Lin Minsong momentarily confused. Yoon Jong-yu went on, saying that Lin Minsong simply wasn't strong enough to face Gu Sara. Once the vanguard was crushed in a single blow, no one else had the will to fight. Only then did Lin Minsong finally realize the mistake he had made. The first coup attempt at Jiangshan High had officially failed. The next day, Gu Sara cheerfully supervised the problem students as they cleaned the campus. She casually commented that they were doing a decent job. After telling them to head back to class once they were done, she left first. Watching the madwoman finally disappear, Lin Minsong and Yoon Jong-yu cursed under their breath, complaining that she never cleaned herself but was great at bossing others around. Just then, the roar of a motorcycle engine echoed outside the school gate. As the pot-lit hair guy was still picking up trash, he barely heard someone shout for him to move, before a motorcycle roared straight up to him. Lin Minsong and Yoon Jong-yu were left staring in shock. The guy was pinned against the wall as the motorcycle's front wheel stopped just short of hitting him. The rider had long, blazing red hair. The instant Lin Minsong recognized who it was, joy burst across his face. The newcomer was Li Yinshu, the former legend of Jiangshan, known to all as Lubu. Lin Minsong asked what was going on, pointing out that Lubu wasn't supposed to be released for a while, only for Lubu to reply lazily that he was out anyway, calling it a temporary discharge. At that moment, Lubu noticed how drastically Jiangshan had changed during his absence. He frowned and asked why the school's atmosphere felt so wrong, questioning not only the smell, but also why everyone was holding brooms and trash bags. Then he glanced at Lin Minsong's face and asked why he looked so wrecked, wondering if a power struggle had broken out. Hearing that, Lin Minsong instantly realized he might have a way to bring Gu Sara down. Meanwhile, inside a classroom, Gu Sara and Baek Jun-soo had just finished arm wrestling. Baek Jun-soo rubbed his hand in disbelief, saying that even gripping a wrist felt that strong, while Gu Sara shot back teasingly that he still had a long way to go. Baek Jun-soo suddenly remembered something and mentioned hearing about her rooftop brawl the day before, asking how she still had so much energy. Gu Sara replied with a mocking grin, asking if he thought she was like him, saying that beating up a few losers wasn't enough to make her breathless and that the losers should go buy drinks. After saying that, she slumped on her desk to nap and reminded him to bring back change. Baek Jun-soo thought helplessly that she had somehow trained etiquette into muscle, and if he came back late, she'd nag him again, so he'd better hurry. Just then, he spotted Lin Minsong walking in with 4 other students, following behind a red-haired man. But as a first year, Baek Jun-soo had never actually seen Lubu in person. The next second, Lubu yanked open the classroom door. Staring at Gu Sara asleep in the corner, he asked in a dangerous tone if she was the one who had turned the entire school upside down. Gu Sara, who had been asleep at her desk, suddenly lifted her head, a thought flashing through her mind. Why did the air suddenly reek of delinquency? Looking up, she saw Lubu pull out a cigarette, and one of his lackeys hurriedly warned him not to smoke on campus. The next second, that lackey was sent flying by a single punch, and Lubu sneered inwardly, thinking Jianshan really had changed if people dared lecture him now. Just as he was about to light the cigarette, Gu Sara coldly told him to throw it away. She then began walking toward Lubu at an unhurried pace. Instead, Lubu blew the smoke straight into her face. Yoon Jong-yu, who had never seen Lubu's true strength either, asked nervously if that was really okay, while Lin Minsong answered with full confidence, telling him to just watch. Lubu glared at Gu Sara and snarled that she should show some respect when speaking to an upperclassman, calling her an arrogant little brat. Those words instantly ignited Gu Sara's fury. She threw a punch at Lubu without hesitation. A sharp crack rang out as the punch landed solidly. Not only Lin Minsong and the others, but even Gu Sara herself was stunned by what happened next. Lubu had caught her punch effortlessly with one hand, smiling faintly as he remarked that she was kind of cute. Gu Sara, who had always taken pride in her strength, finally encountered a true opponent. Baek Jun-soo returned from the school shop with drinks, only to find a crowd of students gathered outside his classroom. He stepped closer to look inside, and the scene before him left him frozen in place. Lubu was gripping Gu Sara's fist tightly, smiling as he said, "You're kind of cute. I like it I'm satisfied in every way." In the next second, Gu Sara shifted from a fist to an open palm and struck at him, but he narrowly dodged. It was only a feint, just as she was about to throw her other punch. Lee Seo-jun arrived for class at that moment and caught the scene. "Everyone, the bell has already rung. You're not fighting, are you?" Gu Sara quickly waved her hands, explaining that they were just messing around. Lubu, standing nearby, couldn't understand why Gu Sara had suddenly become so obedient. At that moment, he recalled what Lin Minsong had told him. Gu Sara was now the boss of Jiangshan, and she was completely smitten with a trainee teacher. So that's him? He thought, just as Lee Seo-jun told the students to return to their seats. Gu Sara turned toward Lubu and said quietly, "Come find me on the rooftop after school, then I'll settle this with you then." After hearing Gu Sara's words, Lubu let out a short laugh. He leaned down and said, "Gu Sara, I've got my eye on you." Then he turned to leave, adding as he walked away, "You're mine now. See you later, cutie." Gu Sara trembled with anger, wondering if she should just kill him right then and there. As Lubu stepped out of the classroom, he glanced down at the hand that had caught her punch. A numb sensation lingered in his fingers. He hadn't expected a girl's punch to carry that much power. Seeing that someone had finally stood up to Gu Sara, Lin Minsong hurried after Lubu, showering him with flattery. The next moment, Lin Minsong heard Lubu laugh again. Lubu clenched his fist and said, She's awakened my possessive instincts. But before that, I need to clear out the obstacles. Back in the classroom, Sarah snapped angrily. Who's that strawberry-haired guy? I'll grind him into strawberry seeds. Beck Junsu quickly said, Didn't you hear? They were calling him Lubu. But Sarah had never heard of Lubu before. Beck Junsu explained, You really don't know Jiangshan's legendary street racer. His real name is Li Yinshu, but everyone calls him Lubu. There are two reasons for that. First, his combat power is overwhelmingly strong. Second, he owns an illegally modified motorcycle worth tens of millions, with a maximum output of 320 horsepower. Red hair. There's also a well-known story about Lubu and red hair. Once, punks from Zhoushan Industrial High stole Lubu's bike. That day, Lubu took on more than 20 people by himself. In the end, red hair returned to its rightful owner. Possessiveness taken to the extreme, backed by overwhelming strength. That is the man known as Lubu. Just as Beck Junsu said they should think of a countermeasure. He realized Sarah had already fallen fast asleep. Woken up, Sarah yawned and said, Why bother with strategies for a single delinquent? Just beat him into the ground. At that moment, Kong Jisoo came running over in a panic. Sarah, something serious happened. Senior Li Yinshu took the trainee teacher up to the rooftop. Hearing this, an uneasy feeling rose in Sarah's chest. Meanwhile, on the rooftop, Lee Seojun asked in confusion, You called me up here. What did you want to talk about? Lubu replied coldly, I just think it's time to deal with an obstacle. He then turned to Lin Minsong and asked if he had the wrong person. Lin Minsong answered, No mistake that he's the trainee teacher that woman cares about. Lubu looked Lee Seojun over, taking in his handsome appearance. A trace of irritation crossed his face. What a waste of a good-looking face, he thought. He then pulled out a cigarette and put it in his mouth. Seeing this, Lee Seojun quickly said, Student, you're not allowed to do that on school grounds. Lubu pressed the lit cigarette against Lee Seojun and said, Enough talk that if you don't want to die, stay away from my woman. The next second, Lee Seojun grabbed Lubu's wrist. I may not understand what you're talking about, he said, but delinquent behavior is strictly prohibited at this school. I'm confiscating this. At the same time, Sarah was already rushing over. She shoved the door open in a panic and shouted, Seojun, only to catch the exact moment Lubu was attacking Lee Seojun. Beck Junsu and Kong Jisoo, who were right behind her, saw it as well. Sarah froze on the spot. Lubu looked down at Lee Seojun lying on the ground and said coldly, Don't give me orders. Just as he lifted his foot, ready to stomp on Lee Seojun's head, Sarah charged in and drove a punch straight into his face. The sheer force of the blow sent Lubu flying backward. Sarah shrugged off her jacket and shouted angrily, You bastard, stop pretending to be weak. As she was still speaking, Lubu suddenly grabbed her to steady himself and said, I've seen plenty of women, but you're the first one who's ever made me cough up blood. Sarah, and that just makes me want you even more. The next second, Sarah violently shook off Lubu's grip, just as the two were about to clash again. Sarah suddenly heard Kong Jisoo shouting about the trainee teacher and froze. She realized Seojun was still unconscious. He needed to be taken to the hospital first. Turning back to Lubu, she said coldly, Your nickname is Lubu, right? The Lubu from Records of the Three Kingdoms was executed by hanging, so I'll just beat you to death instead. Seeing Sarah about to leave, Lin Minsong tried to stop her, but Lubu stopped him. Lubu looked at his own hand and said, There was another woman once. Just as bold as her, I think it took me 2 days to take that one down. The harder something is to obtain, the more tempting it becomes that she'll definitely let me enjoy the thrill of breaking her in. At night, Sarah went up to the rooftop to look for Lee Seojun, thinking that Appa must have been seriously shaken. Not only had he been attacked by a student, he had even passed out. But the next second, Sarah suddenly noticed liquid running down Lee Seojun's face. She thought his injury from earlier had reopened and rushed over to check, only to realize he was just eating instant noodles. The liquid was nothing more than sauce. Lee Seojun then explained that he had suddenly felt like having a late-night snack. while Gu Sarah sat beside him, her face turning red. To break the awkward silence, Gu Sarah asked how his injury was doing. Lee Seo-jun replied that he was feeling much better. Smiling, he added that the red-haired student was incredibly strong, and if that guy ever trained in combat sports, he'd be seriously impressive. Gu Sarah snapped back angrily, "Is that really the point? A student laid hands on a teacher. How? Is that acceptable? That kind of guy needs to be taught a hard lesson." Lee Seo-jun placed his hand on Gu Sarah's head and said that, compared to being beaten by students, watching them stray down the wrong path hurt him far more. Helping students find their way again, wasn't that exactly what a teacher was meant to do? After hearing that, Gu Sarah thought to herself that this was exactly how Appa had always been. Once he noticed someone even a single time, even delinquents who ran wild could be turned around with just a few words from him. But there were also people in this world who didn't buy into that at all, like this bunch of trash from Jiangshan. "Hey, pretty trainee teacher, are you here to unclog drains or something?" Lee Seo-jun quickly replied that this was a staff-only restroom, and that the school prohibited this kind of delinquent behavior. Hearing that, Yoon Jong-yu said with a displeased expression, "What the hell is this idiot talking about? I really want to punch him." At the same time, Gu Sarah and Baek Jun-soo in the hallway were stunned by what they saw. The corridor was filled with rioting delinquents, empty bottles scattered all over the floor. Delinquents everywhere had cigarettes in their mouths, cheering for Lubu's arrival, a sight that sent Gu Sarah's anger through the roof. Just as Gu Sarah was about to lose her temper, Baek Jun-soo pulled out his phone and showed her something. Lubu sent out a mass message, authorizing joint action. Baek Jun-soo said that it looked like Lubu had officially made his move, completely tying her down. At that moment, someone ahead was sent flying, slamming hard into the wall. When Gu Sarah saw the man's face clearly, she froze in shock. The person collapsed on the ground was Lee Seo-jun. Yoon Jong-yu slowly walked out of the restroom and said that if he wanted to play teacher, he should do it somewhere else. Why come to Jiangshan and play such a stupid game? Two other trainee teachers passing by were left completely stunned by the scene. Yoon Jong-yu lifted his foot and said to Lee Seo-jun that the way he acted really made people want to smash his head in. The surrounding delinquents watched with glee, clearly enjoying the show. Gu Sarah's anger had reached its breaking point. She wanted nothing more than to rush forward and kill Yoon Jong-yu with a single punch, and then clean up everyone who dared to defy her orders. But the thought that Lee Seo-jun might see her resort to violence and think she was just another delinquent herself forced her to suppress the urge to act. Yoon Jong-yu kicked Lee Seo-jun once more and warned him not to show his face again. He then walked away, and only then did the two trainee teachers hurry over to help Lee Seo-jun up. Gu Sarah forced herself to suppress the rage boiling inside her, because she knew she had to deal with the root of the problem first. The reason the school had turned into this mess was Lubu. As Lubu stepped closer, Gu Sarah snapped, telling him not to play dumb. She knew perfectly well he was the mastermind behind everything that Lubu answered casually that she really was adorable. That response only made Gu Sarah angrier. Lubu went on, saying he could give her anything she wanted, that if she wished, he would even leave the trainee teacher alone, so long as she agreed to be his woman. Gu Sarah fell silent for a moment. After a brief pause, she slowly said that if she became his woman, he would leave Seo-jun alone, right? While Lubu hesitated, Gu Sarah suddenly grabbed him by the neck. She forced his head down without warning. Everyone around them was stunned by the sudden turn of events. They all thought Gu Sarah was about to kiss Lubu. Lubu chuckled softly and asked if the strawberry-haired girl really liked him that much. Fine then, he said, "Let's go on a date." Not long after, the roar of a motorcycle echoed down the road. Lubu commented that she was impressive, the first woman who hadn't screamed even after riding red hair. He asked her where she wanted to go, saying that as long as red hair was beneath them, there was nowhere they couldn't reach. Gu Sarah lowered her voice on purpose, sounding shy, somewhere quiet. The traffic light ahead turned red that Lubu slowed down and glanced back. "What did you just say?" Gu Sarah suddenly wrapped her arms around his waist from behind, pressing close. She leaned in and murmured, "You already know that a place meant for just two people." Hearing her words, Lubu chuckled, his tone relaxed and confident. A woman from Jianshan knows how to let loose. Gu Sarah is mine now. Sitting behind him, Gu Sarah smiled to herself. She knew it well. He had already walked straight into the trap she'd set. After that, Lubu led Gu Sarah to his private hideout. He glanced around and said calmly, "No one's going to interfere here." Taking off his jacket, Lubu got straight to the point. "Let's cut to it. You wouldn't have followed me here if you weren't ready to face this head-on." Gu Sarah closed the door behind them. She took off her jacket as well, her tone calm and unwavering. "Yeah, here, I don't have to worry about anyone else watching. I can fight you seriously." In the next instant, Gu Sarah launched a punch straight at Lubu. He caught it again without losing balance and spoke in a low voice. "Just as I thought, cunning. You planned from the start to lure me somewhere isolated for a head-on fight, didn't you?" Gu Sarah didn't deny it. "Exactly. Too many people just get in the way." Lubu told Gu Sarah to explain herself. She sneered back without hesitation. "You turned the whole school into chaos, ran your mouth about claiming me, and even laid hands on a teacher." Before the words had fully settled, Gu Sarah struck again. Bang! The punch was caught head-on once more. In the same motion, Lubu locked onto her wrists, gripping them tightly. Gu Sarah glared at him. "What? Are you trying to test me in raw strength?" Lubu spoke to himself, his voice filled with twisted confidence. There was once an opponent, clean looking on the surface, but hard to suppress because of sheer presence. A low chuckle escaped him. "Do you know how I broke someone like that? Power." The moment someone realizes the gap between themselves and their enemy, pride shatters. "Now I'll show you what absolute domination looks like." As the words fell, Lubu hurled Gu Sarah into the air. A brutal punch followed, blasting her away. Gu Sarah was sent flying, slamming hard into the wall. The sheer force made her cough up blood. In the next instant, Lubu was already in front of her again, fists crashing down like a relentless storm. He roared, driven by the urge to completely crush his opponent's resistance. Gu Sarah could only raise her arms, barely holding back the overwhelming assault. Since entering this school, it was the first time she had faced someone who truly surpassed her in raw power. Lubu swung again, his voice cold. "I wonder what kind of expression you'll have when you're pushed to your limit." Gu Sarah twisted her body, dodging his punch, then fired back with a counter. The hit barely did any damage to Lubu. He answered with a brutal strike to her side, sneering. That punch was pathetic. Gu Sarah coughed up blood again, stunned by how absurdly tough he was. "That strawberry-haired bastard, he's strong." Lubu threw another punch. "Feel the difference in power now?" Gu Sarah blocked it and snapped back. "All you talk about is power. I asked that all you've got in that head?" Lubu scoffed. "Aren't you the same?" She didn't understand at first. Lubu replied coldly. "Isn't your mind filled with the same thing? Using strength to rule this school, all just to win that intern teacher's approval." In the next instant, Lubu threw a punch that smashed into Gu Sarah's jaw. His voice twisted as he spoke. "But honestly, I don't hate it. No, this is exactly what makes you appealing. You understand how power works. There's nothing in this world strength can't take. Whether it's love, combat, or anything else." Lubu sneered. "I want you, bitch." Blood dripped steadily onto the ground. But Lubu froze in shock at what he saw next. Gu Sarah had taken the punch head on, with her face. She clenched her fist and said calmly, "I'm done listening to your garbage. You're right about one thing. Conflict is decided by strength." Her punch landed with such force that Lubu coughed up blood. As he swung again to counterattack, Gu Sarah struck back, saying, "But not with your stupid, brute force-only attacks. Real power comes from the legs, the waist, and the fist driven straight through." Her punch shot directly toward Lubu's face. She continued, "This is how you fight, with your whole body. And more importantly, you can't seize a person's heart by force. You make it stay on its own. Love isn't something you can take with strength.